Good morning, all, or I guess happy lunchtime for my friends in South Downs and others of you living in the future. And welcome to Kal-bardr's Corner for this episode of Coffee with Cal. I am Baron Kal-bardr Gellir, King of the Meridian Cross, King of the Argent Comet, King of the Compostella, King of the Palmer's Lantern, Defender of the West, and Reaper. Coming to you live from the southwest outpost of the Barony of South Downs here on the southern coast of Meridies. Now, for today's guest, we have a true and absolute legend of the SCA. A name that is spoken of in hushed tones here in Meridies and around the known world as well. You may have seen him on the SCA Coach's Corner dispensing knowledge, and we are looking to hearing some of those thoughts here today. Please welcome Jarl Ailgheanan Mac Sithigh. Good morning, Your Grace.
Good morning, and it's an hour in the past, I guess, here. So, but yeah, good morning, and hello everyone who's out there in streaming world. It's interesting to be doing it in the AM rather than in the PM. So
right. So usually you guys do your shows on like Friday nights and things, and it's a much calmer, relaxed environment for you. And now we're like, here you got to get up at 9 o'clock in the morning and be on camera with me.
I don't know. I think as the SCA kind of gets back into fuller swing, in the evenings on Friday is going to get harder and harder. Of course, if it gets really back in full swing, Sunday mornings is probably not the world's best time either.
Yeah, I've had a couple have had to reschedule based on things, and I'm looking at next year's calendar, going maybe you might want to shift those a little bit. So we'll see. And that's I've told our viewers that we'll do what we can as we can, and I think we'll adjust as we need to. So before we get started, if you will, introduce yourself, who you are, and why you're awesome, your guys.
So I'm Ailgheanan Mac Sithigh, and I'm a Knight of the Society. I've got a couple other awards that, I probably actually feel more strongly about than that. The bow in Meridies meant an awful lot to me. The fighting part and even the chivalric aspects came a little easier to me than the service, which, it's kind of a shame, but, it's the way it was. People have a tendency to sort of want to do the things that they're good at because they get self-validation from it. And when I was a young and very insecure person, fighting, as soon as I started fighting in the SCA and realized I had some talent at it, the amount of self-validation and affirmation that, hey, I was a person in the world, kids think dumb things. Actually, people think dumb things, and our brains are our worst enemies. And the SCA was a really great place for me to start getting on top of those demons, and get some confidence. So again, fighting came easy, so I did a lot of fighting. Service, it's not that it came harder; it's just it wasn't to me as fun. So at some point I realized that being a peer of the society, and I wanted to be one, about 3 or 4 years in, came with stewardship of the society. You don't just get the title, you get the job, and the job involves doing a lot more than whatever your primary activity is. So when I was inducted in the Order of the Bow, which is the Meridian grant level service order, it meant a great deal to me. I'm a Duke. I go by the title Jarl. It's just my preference to my persona. And, going on 30-something years now, whatever 1986 to 2022 is. So I've been doing it for a little bit, but not as long as some. And it's still a great deal of fun.
I often point this out when people bring up their time in the SCA. So you said you started in 1986. I was
85.
I was not yet born yet, Your Grace. I just want to pull that for you, dude. So there you go.
Lovely.
I like doing that to some of our more experienced members of the SCA.
On one hand, fuck you. On the other hand, I think that's outstanding, and honestly, I'm ready for the new people to take over. The society goes goes steadily forward with the leadership of the old guard,
Right.
but it can go to new and interesting and different and fun places when people with a lot of vigor and energy and ideas get a chance to lead. So, on the other hand, thank you very much. It's awesome.
There you go. So your introduction was great. I really appreciate how you catered it toward the topic today. So I'm really excited to get into the idea of the fighting and the stewardship of the SCA, because I think that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. But before we do that, today's show is of course coffee themed, and that's the most important part of the day. So let's talk about our beans first. Today, I'm keeping it simple. I've got a chocolate cappuccino from New England Coffee. And of course, drinking it out of my very wonky mug that my buddy Bronco totally did not make, or he will not admit to making it. But I love this mug so much because it is just the longest. Elon, what are you drinking this morning?
So my coffee's not nearly as interesting as your mug or even my mug. I'm just having Major Dickinson's from Pete's Coffee. And I'm trying to have as much of it as humanly possible without having to take bio breaks in the middle of this episode.
Right.
My mug is a little bit of COVID artwork. You can see here there is a little death guy, and he is poking a person over here, I think, who is saying, "My mask will protect me." And then there's a giant COVID thing who doesn't think it's going to protect him all that much, per se. But this was something my youngest kid drew early in the pandemic.
Nice. I like kids.
I liked it enough to shove it on a mug.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for that. And all right. So, to our viewers out there, if you have questions during the show, please drop them in the comments over there, where you're watching. Let us know who you are, where you're from, and what your questions are. We'd love to have your interactions during the shows. Definitely gives us some ideas of where we need to go with it. But I guess I'm going to introduce the topic today. So, today's topic is, why do we fight? And that's a really weird and vague and sort of a broad-ranging topic. But I want to little brief background about where it came from and why I tossed it to His Grace for this one. So a few weeks ago, the Crown of Glenavon had their crown list, and before the list, they chose to limit their list. Crown's prerogative; they can do that. The list they limited was to none of their previous royal peers. They ended up getting rescinded by the bod. The whole thing happened. That's not the topic of the show, but that action has brought up some conversations about why do we fight in crown list, right? And there was a topic or a post somebody put up on Facebook about that, and I'm reading through the comments and saw a couple of people talking about that if the crown had limited that list, they would have felt invalidated had they fought in that list, or people from not in that kingdom or where they were from, that they would have felt invalidated. They would have felt not as good about their win. They would have felt not as important as crowns had they won that list with the list being limited. And that got me thinking, why do we fight in crown list, right? And the general topic I saw from some of these people who were dissenting was basically they want to be the biggest, baddest stick in the room. And that hurt my soul. I won't even lie. So I got to chewing on that, and you had posted something on there. I don't know what the exact comment was now, and I was like, I want to talk to somebody about this, and your comments on there were sort of in line with the, I got a problem with this, but let's talk about it. So, what was your initial, I guess, reaction? You've been around the SCA, you've fought in a couple of crown lists, you've hosted a couple of crown lists. I guess give me your reactions to the situation as a whole,
Sure.
sort of what your thoughts on it were.
And I think that was a pretty good introduction to kind of what went down. So, and again, I'm going to preface everything that I'm saying as I understand it with regard to what necessarily happened in Glenavon, what recently just happened in Kal-bardr. It is Crown's prerogative to try to, caretake the list. And to caretake the kingdom, and if they find an individual is, in their opinion, for whatever reason, not worthy, and they don't wish to have them in their list, then that is their prerogative. I think where Their Majesties Glenavon got into a little bit of stickiness is when you select a group of people.
Correct.
You know, when you select a group of people, for whatever reason, you open up the can of worms of, well, is it okay to do other groups of people? And that very, very quickly can get super ugly. I mean, it starts with a group of people of royal peers. You're saying, well, I want to limit the, you know, and however you want to draw that line. It's like, I don't want any dukes, you know, that way we're going to get either a new duke or we're going to get a new royalty altogether. And conceptually, you know, I don't have a terrible flaw with that, except for, you know, my own inherent belief, which I guess I should probably get out of the way. I have always had a probably pie in the sky or fantasy oriented notion of the magic of Crown List. And the magic of Crown List includes a number of different things, but part of which is the list itself determines, you know, who wins and goes on to be heir with their consort and then guide the kingdom for, you know, and frankly, it's a short period of time. Right. But and I got into the SCA with a lot of, you know, fantastical ideas about things. I mean, I was looking for fantasy probably more than I was looking for history. You know, and I've grown to thoroughly love the history, but as I've said any number of times over the course of history now, I am a much bigger fan of the history that we're making rather than the history that we're studying. So I believe in the magic of Crown List and that somehow the list itself, you know, given an opportunity to be fought in a fair situation will allow people of honor to compete and then it will determine its winner. Now, the honest, real truth is the person who has the talent and the training and the dedication and the psychological wherewithal to get through the rigors of Crown List probably has a lot to do with who wins Crown List. But, you know, I still like the idea of the magic of Crown List. And so when you start limiting who can participate for reasons other than you know, I think that this couple, you know, based off of historical information that I am aware of, you know, are going to be a bad fit for the kingdom at this point. You know, I mean, if that's not your determination and you're just saying, I don't want any dukes or I don't want any counts, to me, it infringes a bit on the magic of Crown List. That said, I tried to shape Crown List a little bit the very first time I had an opportunity to do so. So in my first reign, which was in 1997, you were born at that point, right?
I was 10-ish, 9-ish, somewhere in that area. Yeah.
Cool, because I didn't want to have to pull out the FU card again.
Right.
So in 1997, I did not go into Crown List with and with a significant agenda of these are the things that I want to do, but I did have some ideas, you know, and some thoughts, and one of which was I really wanted to try to drive Meridies towards more of a war culture with regard to its fighting. I was jealous of the kingdoms who I thought had a more organized and coherent army. You know, and I loved the Meridian tradition of having a giant amoeba that ran out and fought, and you know, and it was a bunch of heroes. And actually, over time, I've grown to appreciate that probably more than I did at that time. But I wanted to be a war-focused crown. And I hoped that my heir would be a war-focused crown. So I attempted to guide and shape Crown List a little bit too. And I'm not sure if I didn't infringe upon the magic of Crown List there. You know, so to do that, I said, well, every other round has to be spear. You know, so that right there, you know, probably shapes it and takes away from some of the hot stick knights who don't particularly fight in the melee very often, or when they do, they just go out there with their sword and shield. And you know, it was not uncommon at that time for me to see the big sticks run out in the field of Meridies and kind of off to the side at in a melee, and then call, anyone want single combat? It's like, so, I was like, well, let's not have that person. Right. The previous, every other round was going to be weapon style of your choice. But if you fought with a shield, I want it to be center grip, and I have no idea why I did that. Just, I thought, there's a couple of big time guys who fight with a heater. Mm-hmm. The hilarious thing is one of the people who fell in that category, Duke Gareth LeBruin, absolutely kicked ass in that tournament, and he couldn't fight with a spear to save his life. But he had this technique of, as soon as Leon was done, he turned it into a 9-inch knife instead of a 9-foot spear, and was immediately in your face. And he's a big giant at that point, still probably 400-pound man, so he made it to the finals, at least how I kind of envisioned the type of person who might do that. Sir Robert Ock wound up winning for his lady Elfkafu, and of course they had a very war-focused reign as well. And he went on to, continue to influence the Meridian army for quite some time. So as soon as I say there's a magic in it sacrosanct, what's the first thing I did was start messing with the magic a little bit. But that's still not the same thing as saying that you couldn't fight.
Right.
You couldn't participate. You couldn't be a part of the magic. I'm loath to banish people when I'm on the throne, and I'm loath to prohibit their ability to be in Crown List. I would have to have a great reason, but I've never withheld anyone from Crown List. And the only people that I've ever banished broke rules. At one point, people sometimes could get what they would call a first level banishment, for basically just offending the crown. And I always thought, well, why don't you just be bigger than that?
Right. Yeah. I think there's some funny roleplay things you can do with the first level banishment, but past that, you're right. I think that's where the crown becomes.
Sure. As soon as it goes past funny roleplay, it's like, have a real reason and try to discipline them in the hopes that they're going to wind up getting better, or, try to be bigger than that.
Right.
I mean, I both believe in a magic of Crown List, and I'm also okay with people trying to shape the magic of Crown List a little bit.
Right. Well, I'm not going to try to give any reasoning to what the Crown of Glenavon or Crown of County did, whether they're limiting or not. And I've talked to at least the Crown of Glenavon about it and sort of got their reasoning, but theirs is theirs. I think the idea behind it is, and I gave this argument to another Duke recently, was told I was stupid for saying this, but our current rule set says that the crown has prerogative to do that. Therefore, they should be able to do that. And if we want to change it, I'm very much a rules is written sort of person. If we want to change the rules, let's change the rules. But that's neither here nor there. But I think the reasoning they did it, or the reasoning that I can see doing it, right, is because you can't. So the idea of doing like limiting to that, or limiting to, in your case, limiting to a war culture, right? You wanted a war culture heir. You catered your list to a war culture. That made sense because that's what you wanted as your heirs. So if they wanted heirs that were not royal peers, they catered their list to that, or at least attempted to. That makes sense to me. I guess the thing for me, and the question I had was why am I doing this? So I've only entered one Crown List ever. I fought in Crown List out in the West. I've never fought in one here in Meridies, and I didn't fight in that one expecting to win. Let me be very clear here. I talked myself up a lot. I was like, I'm going to go win the Crown of the West. We all knew that wasn't going to happen. Like I'm not that great of a stick fighter, and
just to be fair, while just to lay it out also to people who may not understand, the Kingdom of the West has an extremely long history of allowing people who aren't actual residents to come in and compete for their crown. When non-residents come in to compete for their crown, and if they have a chance, the biggest sticks in the West seem to show up to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yep.
So on one hand, you have this tradition where you say it could happen, And then, again, rarely, if ever, it does.
Yeah, they've. I think the last couple with His Majesty Cyrus being from Oertha, they're like, oh, that's Westy, it counts. And then His Highness Kenrick now, technically in on tier, they're like, oh, but he's not of the West. It's fine. I like watching the hoops they've jumped through to justify their crowns. So I fought in that one because I knew I had very little chance of winning, but I wanted to pay homage to the sort of the history of the SCA. So, but I've never fought in a crown.
No, I love it. What a great opportunity! I mean,
for those out there, if you haven't done that, if you haven't gotten to go out west and look at a crown list out there or fight in one of your, go do it. Oh my God, it is the coolest thing ever. It made my day.
So humility corner. I've never fought in a crown of the West because I don't want to be king of the West.
Fair. And you have a chance of actually winning that, whereas I did not necessarily.
I have a chance, but my showing up would have, at the time caused for sure Duke Uther to have fought and Duke Radner to come out and Duke Fabian to come out and Duke Havek and Duke Hansa and, any number of amazing people. And I could beat any one of them, but that's a hell of a gauntlet to get through.
Right. Fortunately, Hansa couldn't fight that day because he was sitting throne as Prince of the West, or Mist currently. I did have to fight him during Roses, and he stabbed me through me. I've never been impaled by a rattan sword before, but I'm pretty sure he stuck it through me that day. There was some pent up aggression he needed to get out of my face. Apparently, I love Hans. He's a great. That was a great fight. I didn't get to fight Fabian. I fought Connor, Duke Connor. Another great fight.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to throw shade at anyone I didn't mention. There's so many great fighters of the West that can come out of the woodwork if need be to make sure that no upstarts from some other kingdom, unless they can feel comfortable with they're West adjacent.
Right, they jump through those hoops. But I realized, so I fought in that list. And I said, and I thought about that for, it's like, okay, why am I comfortable fighting that list, not fighting Meridian list? And I was like, okay, well, it's because I knew I had very little chance of winning, but also I was comfortable if I had one, because my plan is if I fight in the list, I plan to win, right? That's always my goal. If I show up with the helmet in hand, I'm planning to win that day. I can logic through whether I can or can't, right? I'm like, okay, I can look at this list, and go, meh, I got a chance, or meh, I don't. I fought in Friday Night Fights at Castle Wars. I looked at the list and was like, okay, I actually could win this today. Like I could legit look through this. Like there was a couple of people that I'm like, okay, that's gonna be a tough fight for me. I didn't know the Prince of Atlantia was fighting at the time. I would have added him to the list of people that would have beat me, and it turns out he did. I was like, okay, I can win this. So I looked at the list and was like, there's no way I'm winning this. I'm just gonna go out and enjoy my day. But like I look at the Meridian list and go, okay, I can on a good day beat half this list. I can actually win this, right? Yeah. I may not beat Tim.
And as a smaller list, 24, 24 people or so, that's 5 rounds.
Right.
You can get a good draw. You can have a good day. You can have a combination of things. Right. And as long as there's not a major player who has a major reason why they're focused to be in the list. Yeah. Yeah.
So okay, why haven't I done this yet? And I realized it's because I didn't want to win the Meridian list. I didn't want to be Crown of Meridians. And I thought that, and there's a whole that's a whole other topic of show about some issues there, but I realized that was why. I was like, okay, so why do we do this? And it came up and I saw this thing is, why do we fight? I don't want to fight to prove I'm the biggest stick in the room, because I don't think that does it, frankly. Because I know if I go a couple hours either direction, I'm going to get beat like a baby harp seal, even if I'm the biggest stick in Renegades, right?
Right.
So, and I know that. And I was like, okay, that can't be it then, for me at least. So, like, I'm choosing, and I'll announce it here, as I am choosing to fight in the next Meridian Crown list, pending His Highness allows it.
Awesome.
It will be my first, and I'm excited about that. And my consort is super excited, and we're excited to do that. But I want to do it because I want to be a steward of the society. Like you said in your introduction, I think that really for me is the why I fight, right? And whether that's in a crown list or just in a pickups, I fight for someone else. I'm fighting for my consort. I'm fighting for the populace. I'm fighting for the people, and for the honor of our society, right? That's why I'm there. not to
Yeah.
throw him the biggest stick.
Well, see, that's one of the great things about the Society for Creative Anachronism, Inc., Milpitas, California, is that it's a big umbrella. Right. It's becoming more and more welcoming all the time for all types of people to do all types of activities. But even within a very specific, narrow thing like, fighting, be it heavy or light or, any of the flavors that come in with that, you can still have a lot of reasons and a lot of motivations, and you can have multiple motivations. There's no reason for any one thing to be exclusive. So here's a question that I kind of really like. They ask, if the question is why we fight, what things do you think keep fighting rooted in the idealism of the society versus just competing in a sport? Clearly, your opponent granting you victory is a factor. And that is both a great question and a great observation. I'm going to try to touch the question just a little bit. Thank you very much for that question. I'm going to try to touch. So my knight, Sir Gwydion ap Gwynedd, Baron Gwydion ap Gwynedd, the hero of both my early years and my middle years here now, he absolutely fought for the ideas of sort of that later chivalric idea, almost the 18th century idea of what medieval chivalry was. He loved the magic associated with it, the ability to honor his lady, over and over. I mean, you fight in a tournament, you get to actually recognize them as many times as you want, but at least at the beginning of every fight. Right. He loved the opportunity to stand and test himself against others, but also to test himself against himself. Is he going to be honorable and chivalrous in all ways in the midst of this combat? Is he going to give his opponent the benefit of the doubt before he gives himself the benefit of the doubt? Is he, if anything's in question, is he just going to take a shot? And he never took an arm or a leg, I think, in his history of fighting, that he didn't take his own arm or leg to even the combat up. I mean, he took it to extremes that I don't actually adhere to, but I still love. And I still think that I think the SCA is not only is it big enough to have that, it desperately needs those beautiful ideas. And I think what you said actually falls a lot in the line with that. And I tell you, I'm going to come from a very sport perspective, and I don't think it's a dirty word. I don't think thinking of SCA fighting as a sport is a dirty concept. I think if you take it to the notion that I'll do anything to win, then you've absolutely missed the most important parts of what we do, and the sort of spiritual, magical reasons behind fighting, and the ideas of being able to display your prowess and your chivalry at the same time. But I'm a big time sport enthusiast with regard to SCA combat, and I believe that by taking it and beginning to think of it as a sport and train for it like as a sport has helped me become, it's helped put me where I am, wherever that is on the SCA fighting map. But taking it seriously as a sport put it there. I came in with talent for sure. I was tall, and fast, and I already had a bunch of fakes, and I came in with a basketball background, and so ideas of training and drills and
Footwork.
faking and getting moment. I always tell people, like, basketball, that doesn't seem like it fits very well. It's like in basketball, especially on offense, you're looking for a microseconds advantage to get past or to shoot over your opponent, and that's fighting. I'm looking for a microsecond advantage that either I create or I notice as a flaw in my opponent's defense, and I take advantage of it with a shot or a setup for the shot. So that's, it was an easy transition for me to go from how I played basketball to how I fought. But gosh, I mean, without Gwydion's influence and without that influence on the society, and I want to say that, I really super appreciate hearing you say that's a big part of why you fight. no one in Meridier's, apart from my knight, really played with that as their spiritual North Star more than Baron Edward of in Georgia. Master Edward, Baron Edward, Sir Edward, finaled in Meridian Crown List multiple times, armed or legged his opponent, took his own arm or leg, and wound up not winning those fights. And, on one hand, that's just amazing. And on the other hand, that, I normally take an arm or a leg on purpose. So I don't feel any need, if I did it on purpose, then why would I try to, again, my sport mind conflicts with it's a really cool, honorable show that we're putting on, and an opportunity to, so those things conflict. But what makes, hopefully, what I come out of it is I'm a very sport motivated, focused fighter who would rather be thrown out of the SCA and never get a chance again than cheat. And the reason why that conflicts with sport is because in sport you do anything to win.
Right. Up to the line again, because I think even in basketball.
What do you mean up to the line?
Okay, all right. I'll let you say that then.
Tell me. Are you familiar with the NFL? Or do you know who the Patriots are?
Yes, I
do anything that you can get away with to win.
Right. Okay. So yeah.
So which I don't wish to advocate. I like what we do better.
Because I think the honor of the game is for us is more important. And you're right. And I think the thing that Genevieve said there, of your opponent granting you victory, Viscount Fergus talks about that a lot on the shows I've done with him. I think that's a really interesting factor of our fighting style, right? That I is the there is no judge. There is no, I can't judge my blows. There's no third party. Yeah, we have our marshals and they occasionally add in their input if one of us missed something, but it's still the opponent's job to call the shot, right?
Yeah. Not miss something, miss things.
Miss things.
Marshals shouldn't be there for miss something. They're there for missing some things.
Sure. Well, I think I bring that because there was I think our last crown list, there was a blow that was missed by both fighters, and they both stopped and went, "Did we miss something?" And I think they both thought they heard it or saw it, and we all went, "Maybe." And they discussed it, and it was because it was one of those things. I think it hit the guy's brim or something, and he thought he felt it, but it didn't sound right. It was one of those weird situations. But it's good to have a marshal to do that when.
Also, that's something that might never happen in some other people's kingdoms.
Correct. Yeah. That's admittedly true. So, but I think the question she asked, and I'm going to bring it back slightly, is the fact that fighting is rooted in our culture and the idealism of that. Everything you talked about your sport and winning the sport, I completely agree with that. Right. I think we have tournaments and you win the tournament and yay. And it shouldn't be to the fault of the rules. We have rules, we have honors and ideals, and that's the thing. I think our crown list is different than that, though. Yes, it is generally going to be the biggest stick in the room because the person who's the best of the day wins the day, right? I would also hope to your magic of the crown list, that the crown list would protect itself in some way, and the person best suited to win crown would win. I think with our structure, and I'll be curious of your concept having been crowned in multiple places now, that just being the biggest stick in the room doesn't really make you best to be king of the kingdom, right? I think those two things are separate.
It's not even close.
Exactly. So why do we do that to ourselves? Why do we put the biggest stick jock on the biggest seat just because he won a tournament?
I think you're going to have to get in your time machine and go back to about 1966. Sure.
Because I think that's where I start looking at the sort of why do we fight in those tournaments is, I could win. So let's put me in the future and say I am the biggest stick. I am the hottest stick jock in the known world. I can beat everybody down, but I have zero administrative ability. I don't want to be crowned. Well, okay, I'm not going to go fight in crown list, even though I know I can win it. Right? Yeah, I want to be
sure, but again, these are things that have never stopped anyone.
Sure.
I mean, very few people. I mean, I'm sure it stopped some people, but there have been any number of great crown list victors who have been mediocre to terrible crowns.
Sure.
And there have been some really great crownless victors who've been relatively decent crowns, and that's very likely because their consorts made up for their weaknesses with regard to the administration and leadership of the kingdom. So we should always factor in the consort when we're talking about whether or not a person should or should not compete, because if they win, will they be good or not? I mean, if you can pick a great consort or be lucky enough to be in a relationship with a great consort, or again, whatever the reasons how you came with that consort, if they on one hand, you should be able to get along. Sorry, I got to stop saying on one hand, because eventually I wind up having hands like an Indian goddess. Ideally, the person should also try to make up for some of your flaws. And I've been very, very fortunate over my history to have had some great and amazing consorts who have made up for any number of flaws that I have with regard to my ability to effectively lead and be a steward of the kingdom.
Sure. So I think that's the thing. Then if you, again, when you're looking at the why, right, and that's back to the topic of why. I think that's the idea. Is if you're going into it to prove you're the biggest stick in the room, then I would say you're doing it for the wrong reason. If you're doing it to be the crown of the kingdom, and you've planned for that, right? In that case, planning for that is you have the money, you have a good consort, you have the time, you have all the whatever resources you need to be crowned, right? Because there's been a couple of times where I was like, I could go fight in this crown list, but I don't have the resources right now. I don't have the money to do this. My relationship isn't where I want it to be. So if I were to win, I would do a good job of this kingdom, right? Again,
right.
Knowing I probably wouldn't win anyways, just because I'm not the biggest stick in the room, but get ready, it's a good day. I think that's the idea. You have to know that. And you're right. I think there have been some crowns we've had that were just the biggest stick in the room that day and were not good crowns. And I won't speak to that because I haven't been around for I have been very fortunate in my very short time in the SCA comparatively to have really great crowns. Some were less good than others, but I haven't had a truly bad one in my opinion yet. I
mean, it's not necessary. It's not an easy task. I mean, sure. You're if you don't like shtick, you really shouldn't fight in crown list, because every barony you go to's got like 20 minutes of shtick they want to do for court that you're going to have to sit through, and you might be incorporated into. And if it's hard because there's a lot of introverts in the society, as there are in the world at large, and being on the throne is hard for an introvert. But a lot of great crowns are inherently introverted, and they've been able to push through and do great works. But I don't want people to think that being crowned is the hardest thing in the world, because by far it's not. Sure. And in a kingdom with good support system, the kingdom helps you go through it. And as long as you're not trying to change everything and rewrite kingdom law and everything, you can ride through an awful lot, on the throne, and be willing to take advice and support of people who've done it before. People sometimes, I've always thought that being a royal peer has a job, and that job is to help other royalty when they require or need help, and to advise them and to give counsel and honestly to pick up the thrones and move them, and to do all to do whatever it takes to help someone get through the reign, especially if they've won and they don't have a great support system. Become their great support system. I've tasked royal peers in the past to take on those responsibilities and to not just treat it as a title, but like the other peerages, treat it as a job.
Which I have to give credit to in Meridia's, our roses do, I think, a great job of that. And not speaking to our previous male consorts or male peers, but our roses do a really great job of stepping up and sort of being that support system for our new princess and our new crown.
Sure.
And I see the knights rallying behind their king and doing things. So I appreciate that of our kingdom. You're right.
And oh my gosh, and there's been since they started in Meritiers, or not long after they started, the rapier community has been some of the biggest proponents and supporters of the crown. I mean, they aligned themselves to be the supporter and to defend and to help and assist the heirs, the princess and the queen, or the consort side. But that just turns into supporting the kingdom and to supporting the royalty, the crown at large. And holy moly, if they had a plan that was like, how do we, because when rapier first started, it was there was people combating against it in a way, and it was having a there was a lot of negative stigma associated with it. And if their plan was, well, let's just ingratiate ourselves with the consorts and to help the kingdom that way, then that was the most genius thing they ever did, because nothing broke down barriers more than a bunch of knights watching the queen and the princess be well tended to, well cared for, and well loved. It's like, well, all right, I'm already down with that. So, let's give the rest of it a break.
You can't be mad about it. Yeah, at that point. Yeah. So we had a question come in, I think, on this topic, and sort of about being crowned, right? And being sort of leading your populace, whether in a barony setting or crown setting. From Randall, what do you think about the ideas of Palatine baronies? Or in this case, like the far west, right, is Palatine barony that alternates cornets between rattan, arts and sciences, and service. Like, how do we look at that sort of different ideas or different routes to crown, right? So let's remove the fighting from it for a second. What do you think about that?
Well, on one hand, I'm a traditionalist. I never would have thought I was going to be a traditionalist. I always thought I was going to be a young Turk who's staring up at the man going, we'll knock you down. And then one day I woke up and realized I was the man. And that was a horrible awakening. And it turns out I'm a bit of a traditionalist. So I don't necessarily love the idea of changing how we get our crowns. As regard to how we get Palatine baronies, whatever works for your world is fine, over there. But, from a society standpoint, I'm not in favor, but I got to tell you, I'm probably a lot more closely aligned with the idea, or could potentially get behind the idea now in 2022 than I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I allow myself to change my mind. I do not have a closed mind about things, even though it may take a long time to open it up. I try to use my heart as a means to open up my mind. And then that's been a pretty good way to go. So, when rapier first started in Meritiers, I was against it like everyone, like most of the other heavy combatants that I knew. And for the dumbest reasons. Oh, it's super dangerous. Someone's going to die. It's like, well, no, not really. And, it's, they stab each other in the feet. It's not chivalrous. It's like, we piled on reasons one after the other. And mostly, it's like, well, eventually I don't want them to ever be competing for crown. I don't want us to have a rapier crown. It's like the reason after reason after reason to not like something, and you open your heart and see that it's it's a good activity that with great people doing it, and then I became a big proponent. And then when I was fortunate enough to serve on the SCA board of directors, I got the opportunity to weigh the decision and add my vote to support the peerage for it. I was also one of the votes that killed it the first time around, because I wanted the Knights of the Society to take one more shot at owning prowess, and the Knights of the Society said, we own prowess, but we don't want to own that. And I'm like, all right, you've spoken. So it deserves to be a peerage. So we'll move on to hopefully helping it become a peerage. So while I'm currently closed-minded on the idea of having arts and science crowns or mixed media crowns, I can't say that it's completely a shut door, because I've had my mind changed before in the past. But for better or for worse, within the fighting community of the society, we associate rank with royal peerage ranks. So we think of counts as being a little better than knights, and patently untrue, pun intended. We think of dukes as being inherently better than counts and the other knights, also patently untrue. But we still think that, even if it's not entirely accurate. I mean, some dukes are, some dukes aren't. Some dukes won crown list twice, or however many times, and they weren't the best fighter in the kingdom. They were the best fighter who fought in crown list that day.
Right.
You know, and that's so the rank associated with, winning crown list isn't entirely accurate, but it's still something that's there. So in the original, when we first started talking about this and you pinged me to say you'd like to kind of further discussion, and when I commented on your post, when I was talking that, the desire to test yourself is a legitimate thing that fighters should be doing. Where am I at? Where do I stand? How am I able to compete today? And this can be a rapier thing. This can be a heavy thing. But within the heavy community, one of the ways to test yourself is crown list. And you can have, and I'm looking forward to being a great crown and to do whatever I can for the kingdom because I love giving out awards, especially awards of arms. All these things can be true. And I want to test myself at this time in my life to see where I stand and my ability to rise above the field and do well in crown list. And while crown list are not always the best of the fighters or the best sport, the additional element of as the rounds progress and you get closer and closer to the prize, adds a psychological weight that I've seen it. It can absolutely derail the best fighters. If they get weighed down by the subject, and I have seen time and time again, the lesser fighter wind up winning the finals of crown list because they didn't have any pressure. They were loose, they were relaxed, and the other person was thinking about what they were going to wear for when they get the crown put on, and what they were going to wear at dinner that night, and how beautiful their lady or their consort was going to look, and the things that they were going to do. And they had too many things on their mind and could not navigate the weight associated with getting closer and closer to the last blow in crown list. So that's a test too. So when I talk about testing myself and using crown list as the crucible to test myself, I am not always talking about it from the concept of I'm the biggest stick in the room. I'm the most complete fighter in the room who can put their emotions and their and stuff in the right place to be able to, stand above the rest of the field. So I think you can want to be crowned for quote unquote all the good reasons and also want to test yourself. I mean, if you don't want to be crowned, then that's not the test for you.
Right.
But if you're okay with being crowned, or you enjoy, I enjoy being crowned. I have never had anything but great experiences on the throne. And that doesn't mean I've had, I've had great experiences being on the throne of Meridies and the throne of Aidenville. And it's been just amazing and life forming for me, and hopefully not too terrible for the kingdoms. But I enjoyed that. And it's as cliche as it is to say, well, I get a big kick out of giving people AOAs. Oh my gosh. I really wish everyone in the society could take someone's hand who's been in the SCA for a couple of years or less and say, and today we would like for you to forever be known as Lord, Lady, AOA title equivalent of your choice, of our kingdom and the society. And to see the tears well up in their eyes, and it's a great feeling. I wish everyone could have that. And every so often I feel the need to test myself.
Right. Okay. So I want to ask you, I think the point you made there, which first of all, thank you for that sort of poetic description of being crowned. You're absolutely correct. And I've at least been there as a herald, and I've seen that. So I understand part of it. It's not come from my hands yet. So it's only part of it I get. So I like your description of crown list, and it's not only about being the biggest stick, but also about the emotion side. And can you balance that and all that. Like that's really interesting, and I consider that that's part of the sort of skill of winning Crown List, right?
It is a part of prowess for sure.
Yeah, it's part of the sure. So you fought Meridian Grand Tournament, our biggest tournament, I would say, arguably in Meridier's, and one of the bigger ones I think in the known world. But how does that compare for you to Crown List in that weight? You fought in both.
So for those who don't know, Meridian Grand Tournament is a series of tournaments throughout the day where the first and second place qualify for the final Meridian Grand Tournament. And then the populace, the crown, the various orders who support things within the list have an opportunity to select a champion to round out the 16. And then from that 16, they have a tournament, and then they eventually have a grand champion of the whole day. No offense to the tournament, not that it can take offense, but that final 16 thing is just another tournament. That's just going out and if I somehow make it to that 16 and giving myself an opportunity to let my training come through. You know, you try to fight every fight, and be true to your training. And if you do what you're supposed to do and you fight well, then you have a very good chance of winning. And, you know, suddenly you realize you've won the whole thing. So from a sport perspective, that's just another tournament to me. Okay. Crown List has a hell of a lot of extra going on with it because of what it means. For the very best fighters, they're able to marshal through those feelings and put it back to more of this is just a tournament and I'm going to try to do well in each round and see how it goes and get to the end. The tournament sponsored by the Order of the Chalice in Grand Tourney, that tournament means an awful lot to me. And I have to marshal, even more than Crown List, I have to marshal my emotions and my passions. I want to do well in that tournament because I always want to do well. And if you win, you get the opportunity to designate where funds that have been raised, and it's oftentimes a goodly sum of money, and to put back in the world and help people. So it's harder for me and more of a challenge for me to marshal my emotions for that than it is to win Crown List. Now, I've got a number of Crown Lists under my belt now, so I'm not saying it's always been, but that particular tournament within Crown List has an awful lot of weight for me that I have to navigate through. And I've been fortunate enough to do that a few times, but that tournament ranks.
Most recent winner of that, correct?
Yeah. That tournament ranks with Crown List. Neither are harder to win than something like Candlemas. Okay. Candlemas is a harder tournament to win. It's a truer challenge of your overall prowess, your physical prowess, and then the mental prowess of fighting tired. Because if you're not tired by the end of it, then you're an unbelievable athlete. Because it's just so much fighting. Right. It's pull after pull after pull. So you might fight 7 people in the first, and then another 7, and then 6, and then 6, and then 5, and 5, and 4, and 4, and 3 till you get to a 16-person tournament at the end. It's just a large pool tournament with a lot of fighting. So, you have to do well in all your pools, and then you have to, do well in the final 16. And, I don't try to I don't try to do well in the pools. I try to dominate the pools. I want to win every fight. That's the test. The test for me is to do well. And winning is a byproduct of doing well, is to do well and to do right by my training in every fight. So that's a harder test. I've not won that one. I've come in second a couple of times, but if you're like, oh man, you can't win that, you might not be very good. I challenge anyone to beat Rombaldr and Branos in their primes, one after the other. And that's how I've always come in second in those tournaments. I beat one of them and couldn't couldn't beat the other.
Yeah.
That 2-person gauntlet is extremely tough. I mean, probably one of the bigger challenges in the society, I would say.
And I would argue that they would probably say the same thing about you, Your Grace. So dang it, Ailgheanan's here again. We have to fight through that. So that's interesting, and I think that's Candlemas is. I knew there was another tournament I forgot, but Candlemas is another one that's a big tournament, and that's what I want to look at is the when you're discussing the emotional weight versus the physical weight of tournament fighting. I think that's a really great description of that. So thank you for that. All right, I'm gonna do a couple of show plug things, and then we'll do some final thoughts because I've got to wrap this up. And apparently, you got song excited for Candlemas this year, so she's ready. She gets
excited for fighter practice. I mean, it's they're just excited. They're just excited. It's great.
Love this song, man. All right, coming up next, let's see. So actually, over on Ask the Knights Live, they will be live tomorrow evening for Ask the Squires with Lord Iantius. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And Centurion Magnus. They're actually letting Effin host that one, so excited to see what Effin does with his first episode hosting and out in front of the camera. And then later in the month, back to Ask the Knights Live with Sir Leotolf of the Silver Hills and Sir Volric, now here in Meridies. So those are both Countess Honora's knight and foster knight. So it'll be interesting to see her interviewing both of them. Two great gentlemen. I fought Leotolf in Western. That was actually my pick in the Western list for my first round. He taught me what it meant to be Westie. He hit me hard. It was fun. And then
His Excellency's a great fight. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but both those are great fighters. I'm looking forward to seeing those episodes. And also, just if you haven't watched Ask the Knights Live, go check out season 2 for their stuff. I mean, go back watch season 1. Logan's a great guy. He did 50 great episodes, but the new crew is doing an amazing job with these episodes. So keep an eye out for that. Coming up next on Kal-bardr's Corner, I'll be live back here in 2 weeks on, what's the date on that? I'm terrible at this. On the 18th with Sir Singenius, talking about the bird's eye view. So Singenius is a amazing new night out in the West Kingdom, but he does a lot of the drone footage. It's Brown Falcon Productions on YouTube of a lot of the fighting we do, and it just has gotten some amazing shots of the sites we have and the fighting we do. And he actually has to not fight to do this, so it's a service he's providing the community. But I'm really interested to talk to him about that and sort of just how he's viewed that and sort of why he started that. So looking forward to sitting down and chatting with Singenius on that. If you'd like to support Kal-bardr's Corner and all the others, the channels we produce, we help in SCA Coaches Corner being one of them, Ask the Knights Live being another. Check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/KK Productions. You can join the Grand Wall of Patrons. Just sent out the Q3 rewards actually yesterday. So if you are a patron, my apologies for being delayed on those, but they should be in your mailboxes soon. If you cannot support us on Patreon, look us up on Redbubble, search KK Productions. Also, if you're really, really bored and scrolling TikTok, check me out on TikTok at Kal-bardr. All right. What's coming up next in Coach's Corner, Your Grace? I mean, what's your next episode?
This Friday's episode is basically I forget the actual title. It'll probably come to me as I'm saying this, but in my mind, it's should I stay or should I go? Can an old dog learn new tricks? Or do you just get at some point, does fighting pass you by and is it time to move on, or can you learn something new? And, how do you put yourself in a place where you're learning things new and can keep pushing your own prowess and learning? It's got, I think Branos is running that one, and they're bringing in His Grace Palomar from the middle, who is a living example of, he's done a lot, but starting to get old, and just like me, I'm not trying to I'm not throwing shade because I too am getting old. But Palomar's had to kind of work to reinvent himself, and I think a couple other folks will come in and help out with that. But I love it when people start to reinvent themselves and can continue to find new ways to enjoy fighting.
That's fair. And if you didn't get to see this last episode, just this past Friday, you had the women of Cornets and Crown, an amazing selection of half. It was 5 of the 10 people of our female fighters who have won Cornet or Crown by their own hand. I caught 5-10 minutes of it when I was driving, but an amazing episode. Some great.
Can I plug that for just a second? Oh my gosh. First of all, everyone on there was amazing and great, and it was inspiring to hear their stories. And in some ways, it was inspiring because of how normal certain parts of the of winning Crown List as a female presenting fighter was. But then, you know, you have to also hear the challenges they went through. But worth 10 times the price of admission. You guys got to check out Sir Mathan from the West. She came in hot and firing from all cylinders, and she's 80 years old. Was I think the first winner in the West, so probably the first female presenting fighter to win a list. Oh my goodness, is she just amazingly candid and intelligent and sassy. Holy, you know, John the Bear Killer's been like my SCA hero from the very beginning. But I'm like, move over, John. I might have a new champion of the heroes. So you guys check out Sir Mathan and the rest of the amazing people who will who'll be dropping knowledge like mad in that episode. And you can find it in YouTube. You can search SCA Coach's Corner in YouTube, and the channel will come up, and you guys can find that episode. So good.
And I'll go pull it and share it out to the Kal-bardr Corner page after this episode as well. Because I agree. I plan to go back and watch the rest of it because the 10-ish minutes I caught while I was driving, because I like to check in, see how things are going. Was definitely worth the drive.
It's extraordinary. Extraordinary.
All right. Well, it has been an hour. So some final thoughts. I said this earlier, the idea of why do we fight? I think this for me was the topic of the show, and was when I read those comments, I was like, I wanted to sit back, and I literally sat back and was like, I need to reevaluate this. And I've done this a couple times. I think I challenge all the fighters out there. If you haven't done this, please do sit back and think about why you fight. We've talked about being a sport. We've talked about being an honorable game. And for me, when I take that field, it's not for me. There's a favor hanging up back here behind my screen with some children's names on it, and that is a favor I'm going to carry with me forever, because I've fought in a handful. I've had an honor to fight in a handful of Rose tournaments for some amazing people. I have some amazing consorts, but those kids that day gave me a favor, and I wore that and was like, this is why I'm doing this, right? And that was really a reminder to me. And it's a simple, just a white piece of cloth with their names scribbled on it, but that for me that's why I'm there. It's not for me, it's for them, right? And that's may sound super poetic, but it's true. So yes, at the end of the day, I can be a sport and I can be the best stick on the field. But if I don't do it with the correct honor in the right way, then I haven't done it, in my opinion, the right way. And I challenge everyone out there to think about that as you take the field next. Your Grace, final thoughts.
One, it's not for me to decide, but I hope I've walked that line between having an honorable place that I'm fighting from and the right reasons. My lady, Duchess Amber, laughs, you know, when we talk about inspiration. She's like, you're not inspired by me, are you? It's like, I'm inspired to fight because fighting, you know, and it's no slight to any of the people that I've ever fought for, but I don't need any inspiration to fight. The fighting itself is my inspiration. But the token that I bear of my lady and the inspiration that I take from whomever I'm representing is what hopefully keeps me honorable as a fighter. You know, I don't need them to win, but I need them to not cheat and to not give myself all the advantages. You know, because first of all, they're straight up cheating, but there's also just, if something could go 50-50 and you're always picking you, I don't know that your heart's in the right place. You know, your opponent's such a big part of, you can't be in a fight without your opponent. So give them the benefit of the doubt occasionally. I try to give them the benefit of the doubt most of the time. If I have a question, why don't you just favor them? You know, what's the worst that can happen? You have to go back and learn to be better. But I hope that I've walked that line. You know, I know that I'm probably doing it right with regard to the sports side of things. I hope that I'm doing it right by the honorable, magical, the most, you know, the really cool and things that make our sport different than other sports way. I hope that I'm doing that too. My final thoughts are, Cal, everyone listening and anyone you can talk to, get yourself in a place where you can participate in Crown List. Be a part of the magic. Don't put so much weight on whether or not you can win or whether or not now would be a good time to reign. If you can push your line back a little bit, you'll be fine. The kingdom will support you. The royal peers will support you. And as long as you're not a dick about stuff, people will come out of the woodwork to support you to make sure that your reign is as good as it possibly can be. You don't have to be in the best financial situation, and you don't have to be in the best fighting shape. And things don't have to be perfect. Don't wait for them to be perfect. Go be a part of the magic in the process. And then the list, because if you do that, then there's a lot of people on the list. And when there's a lot of people on the list, that's when the magic is fully allowed to take place. And the magic of the list itself will pick the person who's probably most ready to go. Certainly the person who's most prepared to navigate through the emotional weight and push their prowess to the limit. Go be a part of the magic. Go be a part of this stuff. Don't wait till it's perfect, and enjoy it. Learn from the experience. The only way to learn how to win Crown List really is to win Crown, to participate in Crown List and push yourself there. I know there are people who win their first Crown List, whatever. Those are exceptions to the rule. Most people had to play before they could win. So be a part of it, enjoy it, make it magical, and that will keep the magic alive in a society.
Nicely said, sir. Nicely said. All right, folks. Well, we appreciate you tuning in this week and every week. But for now, that, my friends, is an empty cup. Check us out in 2 weeks back on Coffee with Cal, or tomorrow night with Ask the Knights Live. We'd love to have you. And you make us, SCA Coaches Corner every Friday. So tune in for some knowledge. But until then, this has been Ailgheanan and Cal in Kal-bardr's Corner. Have a good day, everybody.